Hey Skyline.
Happy Veterans Day.
Today we honor the courageous veterans that so kindly served our country.
We had the privilege to meet with and interview some of the members of the VFW.
My name is Bill Bradfield. I joined the United States Air Force in 1964 and served until 1985. I graduated as a distinguished graduate from my university in ROTC, and so my first assignment was pilot training. Pilot training was 55 weeks long, very competitive, very challenging, and so that's what I spent my first 55 weeks in the service doing. The Cold War, I don't know if you all are educated about that or not, but that was during the period of time when Russia and the USSR and the United States were at each other's throats, and I flew B-52s on what were called nuclear alert missions. The United States had what they called the Triad, which was nuclear-armed submarines, land-based missiles, and airborne bombers at all times. I also served in Vietnam from 1968 to 1969. I was a forward air controller. My job was to work with the U.S. Army in support of them and to control tactical fighters on any enemy positions that the Army or I identified. I flew 330 combat missions in a year. So my job was to airborne in a light airplane, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Light unarmed airplane. I flew over the Army. I helped them in any way that I could. Sometimes they were lost. I had to help them find where they were. Other times, and most of the time, it was a troops in contact situation. And so my job was to call in tactical air, both Air Force and Navy and Vietnamese Air Force, to drop their ordnance generally very close to where our friendlies were. So that was a very demanding job, required a lot of skill on both the part of me to mark the target as well as the fighters to do their job. I would say on 330 missions I was probably shot at about 300 of those. So my most memorable experience is surviving the war. I was fortunate enough to be awarded 3 Distinguished Flying Crosses during the course of my time in Vietnam, a feat which I'm very proud of. I lived in a GP medium tent, which was about a 20-man tent, and I'll show you pictures here in a minute. We flew long and hard hours every day, and so generally we sat around in the evening having our dinner, drinking a beer, drinking a soda, telling stories about what happened to us during the day and what kind of missions we were on. This is the tent that we lived in as we were first setting it up. As you can see, we were putting sandbags all around it. At night, usually 3 or 4 nights a week, we were rocketed with 122 millimeter rockets, and so we did everything we could to protect ourselves. And you can see in the back here, we had an underground bunker that was covered with sandbags and other materials to protect us, and we had to dive in through the door to get in there for protection. The O2, it's a Cessna 337. It was an interim aircraft used by the forward air controllers. It had 2 seats, but generally we flew alone. You can see on the wing and on the other wing as well, we carried 2.75-inch rockets, which were white phosphorus, and we used those to mark the target for the fighters so they knew where the target was, and we gave them directions on how to drop the ordnance based on that mark. We really didn't do anything when we were in Vietnam, but we got one R&R during the course of that time. I was married. I had 3 young children at home, so my wife met me in Hawaii, and we spent a week together. We had no phones, we had no radios, we had no television, so it was kind of a lonely environment. And other than Hawaii, I only talked to my wife one time in the course of the war. Well, I actually stayed in the service after Vietnam, but I can remember vividly the day my year in Vietnam was up. We all kept track of it on a calendar. We X'd off the calendar every day, so we knew exactly when our return from overseas date was, and it was an exhilarating feeling to get on the, as we called it, the big bird and fly home. I took time off afterwards, as everybody did. It took a little while to unwind and decompress after flying in combat, so they gave everybody some time off. And then my next job in the Air Force was to train forward air controllers as they were preparing to go into Vietnam, which was an interesting job and a rewarding job as well. I already had my degree. I went to military schools, but I stayed on active duty, and after my duty as a forward air controller and an instructor, I then moved into a special top secret program. The war was still going on. However, that became, it was canceled because it was too hard to fly the airplane. And then went into the United States AWACS program. I was the chief pilot in that, and then to NATO and their AWACS program where I was the chief pilot. After serving, Boeing knocked on my door. They were getting ready to sell AWACS to Saudi Arabia, and they wanted me to initially take the team in to train the Saudis how to operate the system. So I did that. I set up that team, took them in, then took over as the VP General Manager of the program, and then stayed in Saudi Arabia. A total of 12 years I was in business development for Boeing in the region. Well, it influenced everything about me. There are certain factors, I think, in the military that you soon learn that serve you well. Integrity, being the best that you can be, whatever you're doing. That was especially true as a pilot, because there's no margin for error when you're flying airplanes. And I spent most of my career as an instructor and an evaluator, so it was my job to make sure that those that I was training and those that I was evaluating were the best that they could be as well. So those and continuing education, constantly learning is, I think, the values that I remember most about the military. Yeah, the military is a demanding place to go. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but I would highly recommend it for anybody who is interested. I enjoyed my years of flying. I always told people that I got paid to have a good time. That maybe wasn't true in Vietnam, but I was getting paid anyway. So I would highly recommend it to anybody who has a mind to want to join the military. They're all excellent services, and I think you learn a lot, even if it's in a brief period of time in the military.
I'm James Doyle, and I served in the United States Air Force from 1967 to 1973. That's hard to tell because I went through the Air Force ROTC program at Washington State, so I didn't just jump into the service. I went through the school part, and we went through summer camp between junior and senior year for 6 weeks at the Air Force Academy, and then was commissioned at graduation. And then when I went into active service, basically went back to school, which was Air Force pilot training in Laredo, Texas. I served in the Vietnam War, and I did one tour, approximately a year. That was an interesting thing, my job assignment. I was a jet pilot coming out of pilot training, but the assignment was to fly as a forward air controller and air liaison officer for the Army. So I transitioned from a jet to a single-engine Cessna. I was assigned to an Army Special Forces unit 50 miles west of Saigon, in the Mekong Delta. I lived with the Army Special Forces for about 10 months and took care of their forward air controlling, putting in airstrikes for whatever they needed it for, troops in contact, midnight attacks, whatever. flight was very memorable. I could go through a lot of other things, but then I couldn't really, I'd have to kill you all. Landing at Travis Air Force Base and coming back to the world. Coming home was known as going back to the world. Well, we really didn't. There was no television. There was one radio station. You ever seen the movie Good Morning Vietnam? That was the radio station. I had a FM radio in my airplane that I could actually tune in and listen to that. That was the only entertainment. There's no experience like it. There's no training like it. There's nothing that compares to the experience that you can get flying in the military. It's a difficult program to get into, but if you're motivated and you get to do the program, it can really give you a lot of great experiences and give you a step ahead in life.
Let's hear from our own alumni, Logan Neal, about his experience with the ROTC program at Purdue.
What's up, Skyline? I just want to tell you a little bit about ROTC and why I decided to join. So ROTC stands for Reserve Officer Training Corps. What that is, essentially in a very basic terms, is it's 4 years of putting you through physical training, which is just workouts, knowledge testing, and just training for military environment, whether that is learning how to march or learning the history of whatever branch you're in. I personally am doing Air Force ROTC at Purdue. What that includes is not a too hefty time commitment. Of course, you do have to be committed because we do get up at 5:30 because we have early morning workouts. Only 3 days a week. It's not the worst thing in the world. But we also have classes that teach us about the history of the Air Force, about customs and courtesies, and a whole bunch of just different aspects of the military, how you're supposed to interact with other people, people above you, people below you. The main reason I decided to join is because I just felt called to, actually towards the end of senior year, to serve my country. I highly recommend, if you're interested in serving your country, definitely do ROTC, because most colleges can assist in paying with tuition, especially private institutions that have ROTC. It's just really beneficial, especially if you're trying to go out of state. Of course, all ROTC branches amongst any school really want that good GPA from you, so you also need to keep your academics up. But I will say that it is not too much time. You can still have more than enough time in the world to go join clubs, activities, do social stuff, whatever you want to do. But these 4 years of my life are going to be dedicated to school and officer training, which I go through 2 years of basic schooling, and then the summer between my sophomore and junior year, if I get selected, I go to field training, which is essentially boot camp, but for people in ROTC. It's so far been a fantastic experience. It's really helped me stay in shape, keep on top of my grades, and just really push me to my limits. I recommend, if you want to serve your country in any way, definitely go the ROTC route, because it has been a phenomenal experience so far, and I am really excited to see what happens in my future. Also, in the future, you're able to really kind of go for whatever jobs you want to. Specifically in the Air Force, you have to test into a pilot slot if you want to be a pilot. But you can also go into Intel if you want to do that. You can do, cybersecurity. There's a whole bunch of different stuff you can go into. And really, any branch of the military can employ pretty much anybody, whether you want to go from computer stuff to engineering to flying, actually want to do infantry in combat. all that is completely possible. My future right now is really up in the air. I have really no direction I'm put in. That happens at the end of sophomore year before I go to field training. But yeah, it's a very basic overview of ROTC and my experience here with the Air Force. Thank you.
To end off, we'd like to salute our veterans by writing thank you cards.
Teachers, please pass out a piece of paper to each table group and turn it into the VFW box in the front office. We are live. Thanks for coming, everyone. I know you're all very excited to be here. So what's up? I'm Mark, the Sal. You know, that guy that happens to go to school here. Yeah. And I'm looking pretty good. All right. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm still horrifying to look at. Anyway, we're gonna have some guests on the show. But before we get into all of that, my good people, we're gonna do some announcements. Oh yeah, but I can't do these alone. I'm gonna need my good old buddy, who is just my friend, and nothing more, Mr. Garrett Steinmetz, sir.
Thanks, Mark. Good to be here.
Why don't you start us off?
Want to join boys swim and dive?
When?
November 18th, 3:30 to 5:30 p.m.
Make sure you bring swim cap, goggles, towel, water bottle, running shoes, and a sweatshirt.
The fall play of the Laramie Project opens tonight and will go through Friday at 7 p.m.
Also, there will be 2 shows this Saturday at 2 and 7 p.m. What would I do without that guy? To be honest, I'd probably be just fine. Alright, moving on. Before we bring out our first guest out here, I'd like to announce that the Holiday Bazaar is coming up December 7th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's going to be quite the bazaar, if you know what I mean. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to bring out our first guest out here to talk about sports. We got Alyssa DeBraga in the building. So, Alyssa, how is Skyline sports teams doing?
You know, sports season is flowering.
Oh.
Gymnastics begins this week.
That's amazing.
We have boys and girls basketball tryouts beginning next week. And sadly, girls soccer has come to an end. They were defeated by Lake Stevens. I know.
How are you doing?
You know, I'm pretty good.
That's always good.
I'm good, yeah. How are you?
I'm doing quite swell.
That's great. That's great.
Well, thank you so much. Let's give her a hand. When we come back, we will have our world famous TikToker, so stick around.
I'm Andres Bosa, and this is what happened this week. Former President of Bolivia, Evo Morales, fled to Mexico late Monday on a Mexican Air Force jet. Bolivia's first indigenous president fled as a result of his resignation as president following allegations of electoral fraud in the October 20th presidential election that he claims to have won. Observers note that it is unclear who is currently leading the nation. Wildfires in the Australian state of New South Wales have killed at least 3 people and destroyed more than 150 homes over the weekend. The fire that stretches the equivalent of half the length of the California coastline has caused emergency services to warn that people should consider evacuating in advance, as help may not arrive in time. Conditions are expected to deteriorate further as temperatures are forecast to top 100 degrees on Tuesday, with winds up to 22 miles an hour.
The Berlin Wall is now relegated to the annals of history. And now we want to ensure that no wall separate people again. It proves to us that no wall is so high and so strong that we cannot break it.
Germany marked the 30th anniversary of the opening of the Berlin Wall on Saturday, a pivotal event that marked the beginning of the end for the Iron Curtain and a divided Germany. Leaders from Germany, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic attended a ceremony at Bernauer Straße, one of the sites where remnants of the wall still stand. The lasting impacts from the division of Germany are still felt as the region that formerly made up East Germany is still economically weaker than the West. This has been your summary of this week's news. Back to you, Mark.
All right, that was great. The guest up next is a real treat for you guys. Real treat. We got a world famous TikToker. That's right, Ben Wickstrand. All right. Ben, it's so good to have you on the show.
So good to be here.
Yeah.
Unbelievably amazing.
Wow. So let's talk about your world famous TikToks.
Yeah, it's recent fame. It's really taken me by storm.
Yeah.
I feel my ego just through the roof right now.
Yeah.
Just so much popularity just coming towards me.
What was your inspiration to make this TikTok?
Well, it's more than one TikTok.
Oh,
I hope you know that it's multiple views.
I apologize.
On every TikTok that I have.
We actually have a surprise for you.
What's the surprise?
We're gonna share everyone your TikTok. So let's roll it. We're putting that in the show. We're putting this TikTok in the show. Dude,
it's pretty
that's
good,
fun,
right? Yeah.
So next question: how has the fame changed you?
Oh man, just
I see it's changed your hair.
yeah, changed my hair, changed my just whole outlook on life, man. Like just unbelievably crazy how life is. Like
That
that's
is crazy.
It's just
It is crazy.
everything, man. You know?
Dude, it's wild.
It's a wild world, man.
But what are your future plans
Just
in the TikTok industry?
keep TikToking.
Keep TikToking.
Yeah, TikTok on the clock, bro. You know?
TikTok on the clock.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that from now on.
Yeah, man. All right.
Well, it's been wonderful, man.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
If you want to see Ben's TikToks, go to his TikTok page, which is
Benjamin Wickstrand.
all right. Let's give it up for him.
Yeah, bro.
Now this next guest, it's a real honor to have him. You know him, you love him, Principal Henning. First up, I just want to say it's a real honor to have you on the show. It's been a lifelong dream of mine to have you on the show.
I'm so excited that I'm here. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
That means so much.
Yeah.
But so ever since you were a kid, did you always just want to be a principal?
No, actually.
No.
I wanted to be a teacher.
Oh.
I wanted to positively impact the lives of kids. I think being a high school teacher, the 4 years that kids spend in high school are probably the most important years of their life. And what they do in high school, these 4 years, these 720 days, makes a difference between what kids can do and can't do for the rest of their life. So I think it's a very important time. But after 12 years in the classroom, I wanted to go into administration so that I could positively affect more than just the kids in my classroom, but students at an entire school.
Wow. Well, we're glad you did. We love having you here. Moving on. That was great. What do you do on the weekends?
On the weekends,
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've got two boys. I got an 8th grader and a 6th grader.
Oh.
So my weekends are usually comprised of watching them participate, and right now they're into basketball. So for instance, this weekend we have a tournament up in Linden, Washington.
Ooh.
So on Friday I'll be driving up to Linden, Washington.
It's quite the drive.
To watch the boys play in a basketball tournament.
Wow. That sounds great. One final thing, it's like, what do you think of the show?
The show?
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Really?
You do such an awesome job. What show is this again?
We call it SPTV.
Oh, SPTV.
Yeah.
But this is a show within the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is just it's my talk show.
Talk show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It has really been an honor. Just thank you. Let's give it up for him. Yeah, it looks like that's going to be the end of the show. I know. I don't want to go either, but I got to go. I'd like to thank everyone here for helping the show possible, and we'll see you next week, all right? Yeah!